Okay, today we're going to be talking about an example of evolution that we can observe today. So let's review really quickly. What are antibiotics and how do they work? What are pesticides and how do they work? Pause the video here and write a response. When you're ready to compare your answer, hit play. Okay, we're ready to review. Remembering that antibiotics are actually medicines that we take to kill bacteria, whereas pesticides are chemicals that are used to kill insects. One concept to evolution is variation. If there's no variation, then a species can't evolve because there's no way to select better traits if there aren't any better, since they're all the same. Variation comes from our genes or our DNA. New genes are produced through only really two mechanisms, either through mutations if we're talking about asexual reproduction like bacteria, or through sexual reproduction. Remember that in sexual reproduction you have meiosis, which contains crossing over, as well as the recombination of genes, so there's a variety of ways that we get new variations. Variations then are passed down from parent to offspring. The rate of evolution. So we're talking about evolution being changed over time. So this is observed from generation to generation. This is not observed during an individual's lifetime. It's over several lifetimes. We can observe evolution with organisms that have shorter generations and reproduce with many offspring rapidly. So can you think of any examples of organisms that have a lot of offspring and reproduce very rapidly? If you said bacteria and insects, you are correct. Let's take a look at this cartoon. Psst. Hey kid, want to be a superbug? Stick some of this in your genome. Even penicillin won't be able to harm you. It was on a shortcut through the hospital kitchens that Albert was first approached by a member of the antibiotic resistance. Now, this cartoon illustrates the idea that bacteria can get traits from other bacteria. It's something called transformation. And we'll see here this small thing that he's holding. What does it look like? You're right, it looks like a DNA double helix. And remember, a piece of DNA is called a gene. So this bacteria is giving the other bacteria a gene for antibiotic resistance, meaning that it won't be affected by antibiotics, which is not good news for humans. All right, we're going to do a little bit of an activity. So you can use either markers or different colored pencils, or just shading in and leaving some unshaded. So what you're going to do is you're going to show how bacterial resistance depends on variation, adaptive value of the variation, survival, and reproduction. So let's think about how an original population would look. So it should represent variety, showing different variety of genes, and we can represent this by shading some in and shading some not in. Think about how bacteria is going to be affected by antibiotics, and then what the population would look like afterwards. You can pause the video here and try to do your diagram. Press play when you're ready to begin. Okay, so we're ready to begin. If we take a look here, we have a variety of traits or different genes that exist in the original population. We then have antibiotic exposure. What did it do to the bacteria? That's right, it killed a lot of the bacteria that we see had a low resistance level are all dead. Now we'll see the final population, which has grown from these two parents. They had identical offspring, so therefore the resistance level of the new population is high. So again, to recap, so your drawing should look similar to the one here. Now remember, you don't need that many different colors. You can really just focus on the idea of high resistance versus low resistance. In the original population, there is a variety of genes, resistant and non-resistant. Resistant adaptation is not affected by antibiotics because it has a gene that allows it to not be affected. Those bacteria with resistant genes will be able to survive when exposed to antibiotics. And the bacteria with resistance genes reproduce more and are able to pass those genes on to their offspring. You may pause the video here so you can copy this down. Press play when you're ready to begin. Okay, we're ready to begin. Let's take a look at the summary. So how have humans caused natural selection of bacteria and insects? And how is resistance different from immunity? Again, pause the video here so that you can write a response and compare your answer by hitting play. All right, we're ready to compare. So humans actually are going to overuse antibiotics. We use them even when we don't necessarily need them, maybe when we have a viral infection, not a bacterial. So we overuse antibiotics. We also overuse pesticides, which are chemicals used to kill insects. So we're killing the non-resistant bacteria and insects, and we're selecting those that are resistant. We're allowing them to survive and reproduce more often by killing off the non-resistant. And the difference between resistance and immunity, well, resistance, remember, is inherited. It's part of your DNA, so it's a gene, it's a trait. Immunity, however, can be inherited, but the most of your immunity is actually developed over your lifetime. So just because your parents are immune to chickenpox doesn't mean you are. You have to get the vaccine in order to develop those antibodies. So you can't develop resistance the way you can develop immunity. Remember, resistance is purely a gene that you inherit. Okay, so our video is done here, so make sure you write down 2 thoughtful questions about this video and their answers on your notes page.